From the City of Angels off the Pacific Ocean, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm George Noory. Welcome to Coast AM. Next hour, story about tsunamis next and some other earth changes with Mitch Battros on Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Noory. You know, for years we've been talking about the Canary Islands, specifically the La Palma volcano, and what could happen if a series of major earthquakes and volcano hit that area. Experts on this program have said this, that there could potentially generate a giant wave which could cause a mega tsunami of about a half a mile high in the region of the islands. Can you imagine that? Water a half a mile high. The wave would radiate out across the Atlantic and inundate the eastern seaboard of North America, including the Caribbean, the northern coasts of South America, and the Americas, some 6 to 8 hours later. They estimate that the tsunami will have waves possibly 160 feet tall by the time they came to the coastlines, causing massive devastation. They also believe the tsunami would inundate up to 16 miles inland, depending on the topography. Here's Mitch Battros from EarthChangesMedia.com. Mitch, this is serious stuff.
It is serious stuff. And that was a very accurate outline of the history of what's happening or what's happened in the past at the Canary Islands. This is not just computer conjecture. This is actual events that have occurred, 3 that I know of. So, yes, that coupled with what's going on currently does have a lot of people looking that way. I've received many emails of people saying, wow, well, where's the USGS on this? You know, what I've learned over the years is that although the USGS does have a world network, true, when it comes really to small areas such as the Cayman Islands off the West African coast, which is I was going to say owned by Spain, but occupied by Spain, governed by Spain, they fall short in reporting. So I actually myself had to go to the Spanish National Geographic Institute to get the most current information. And here's what it is. In the last 7 days of activity, there's been over 1,000 earthquakes.
How many? 1,000?
1,000. Over 1,000 earthquakes in 7 days. Most of them have been measuring in the 1.3 to 2.5.
Okay, they got to get higher, right? They
have to get higher.
All right.
And that's what happened last week. Now they're coming up into the 3s, 3.0, 3.4, 3.5, 3.6. That was enough to trigger an elevation of the alert level. It is now up to level code yellow. So they have actually evacuated parts of the island, El Hierro, Hierro. They've actually evacuated part of the island. If it continues, which everything looks like it will because the numbers are getting higher, meaning that there's magma movement, they will evacuate the whole island. Right now it's just parts of the island. If it reaches up into the 4s, which could happen any day, they will evacuate the entire island.
What kind of an earthquake, Mitch? What kind of an earthquake size would we need in order for it to create the slippage, to create that mega tsunami everybody's concerned about? How big?
Well, it's not going to be the earthquake, George. In this case, what's unique with the Canary Islands is that an earthquake is equated to a volcano. So the magma movement creates the earthquake.
Right.
The volcano can make its eruption. It's the landfall, the landslide going into the ocean. That is what's going to create the tsunami.
All right, but what creates that landfall?
It would be the earthquakes.
Okay. And that's what I mean, though. How big an earthquake would create that kind of landfall?
That is very difficult to say. It depends on the topography. It depends on the walls around the volcano. It will be related to the volcano. It'll be near the volcano. Really, much of the Canary Islands are all basically kind of like Hawaii, but even younger, which means they're even more volcanic activity. That's how they became islands, was former volcanoes. So it depends on those walls, and unfortunately, it appears that the geographical evidence of the dirt, if you will, is not real stable. So I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess it could be as low as a 5, maybe a 5 point. I don't think it needs to be a 9.0, like Sumatra and so forth.
Okay.
The difference is those earthquakes, those 9 point huge, were tectonic plates. In fact, it was a caldera. I'm sorry, not a caldera. It was a subduction zone, which plays differently on the ocean bottom. This, instead of the ocean floor cracking, this will be the megatons of dirt, if you will, landslide, going into the water. So, when we were kids, you ever pushed the sand into
sure.
like a small boat? Yeah, well, that's exactly what's going to happen, except it's on the scale that you had just outlined.
And people aren't going to have too much time. 6 to 8 hours is not a lot of notice. Mitch, stay with us. I want to talk with you about the solar activity as well, and we'll take some calls on Coast to Coast AM. So Mitch Battros will monitor the Canary Islands situation for us. It is not serious at this point, but we're watching it, no doubt. And when we come back with him in a moment, we'll take your calls and also talk about solar activity. Next hour, investigative reporter Linda Moulton-Howe joins us with some incredible stories of high strangeness. Mitch, NOAA is predicting a 30% chance of an X-solar flare coming from this big sunspot. What do you think?
Yeah, certainly is possible. More than possible. I'd give it even a higher number. We have the capacity to look behind the sun as well, so we can see the far side of the sun and know what's coming around the western limb. So we can start to make some of these predictions even before sunspots start to come around. And the ones that, as you mentioned, they're most active right now are 1302 and 1304. The one that seems to be still very active and coming back around is 1293. We'll keep a close eye on that. Right now, I think the NOAA in particular is focusing on 1302 and 1306. Or 1304 at this time. It's been extremely active. I would want to go over that in just a second. I just want to clarify on this Canary Island, keep it in perspective, because I always appreciate that about you. This is not imminent. It is definitely something serious because of the very short time that one would have if indeed it occurs. But it has occurred before at this very volcano, which is called El Golfo. The island is El Hierro. The volcano is El Golfo, and the last time it happened, this particular one was a long time ago, 50,000 years ago, but it did occur. This is not fiction again, and it set off a 300-foot high tsunami. So this is it's something the East Coast of the United States in particular has always been worried about.
Sure, and needs to be aware of this. And that's why it's so important that we've got people like you out there, Mitch, keeping your eyes open. Even though I think we've got tsunami warnings all over the coasts, it's sure nice to know someone says, hey, you know what, I'm seeing a lot of activity before anything happens.
That's right. That's exactly what I'm all about. I think that's what you're all about, and we both have such a passion for it. So let's just say the Canary Islands are back on the radar, and that's a good thing.
All right, and we'll watch it.
Now, we'll watch it. So the solar events, that is what's been occurring. A series of events have been occurring over the last several weeks. August 8th. Was a new M-class flare that occurred. That was on 1263. And it's important to know those dates, as I'm going to come back around and correlate the date of the solar activity along with the earth-changing events that occurred. On August 9th was the first X-class flare that occurred of cycle 24. Significant one, an X6.9. Let's call it an X7. The scale is from 1 to 10 generally. However, as we know, there can some X flares can go way beyond that. But a 6.9, let's call it an X7, is very large and can be very damaging. That was August 9th. Now, that coincides with some natural events that occurred, such as the hurricanes. And there was a lot of volcanic activity that occurred, not to mention the earthquakes. So I want to get that in some correlation tonight of what I call the Sun-Earth causal connection. It's a very tight one.
Does this connection have anything to do with the Canary Islands at this time?
You know what in the way that it could is whatever is going on at the time. When solar events escalate, it magnifies whatever's happened. For example, if there's a tropical storm and a large solar flare event or a CME comes and hits the Earth's magnetic field, depending on the size, the quantity, and the quality of the event, will magnify such a thing as a hurricane. And this is how. It's part of my equation. When the solar event hits our Earth's magnetic field, the magnetic field warps around Earth and protects it. That's our protector. Kind of warps around it like a teardrop or a football. When that occurs, it presses down the atmosphere and ionosphere. When that happens, it affects the jet stream. It's like pushing air out of a balloon, so everything goes faster. When that occurs, when our jet streams escalate, it has an effect on the ocean currents. When those two events occur simultaneously, and they always will, that is how we get our extreme weather. So in the way of fluid displacement would have an effect on earthquakes, also volcanoes. In the way of any water event, has to do with atmosphere and ocean current, and its pressure, if you will, all on the tectonic plates. It's a symbiotic reaction. Now that's from above. That's not even to mention that of how the Earth's core plays into that. We forget it's a fluid core. I know some people think it's hollow, but my belief it is it's as fluid
maybe part of it's hollow, maybe a little bit, huh?
All right, okay, all right. There's that little bit of hollow. And what's new in the last 5 years is the top scientists in the world, such as Gary Glassmeyer, who's internationally known geologist, and his work was specifically on the Earth's core. 7 years ago when I interviewed him, and I asked him, hey, do any of the charged particles during the high solar events have an effect on the Earth's core? He just shut it down. No way. The core is way too deep. It just never happened. Well, within the last 5 years, he's changed his mind. The most current data and the most current belief of most all geophysicists now is that there is a causal effect. I don't know why that was much of a stretch to people. I mean, we have a dipole, and what creates our atmosphere is the dipole. And so when you have this magnetic flux, these charged particles, it's got to go somewhere, and it goes north and south. How could it pass through that without having an effect on the Earth's core?
Oh, and it would. Mitch, let's take some calls here while we've still got you. Let's go to Queens, New York. Anson, welcome to the program. Hi, Anson.
Hi, how you doing, George?
Good.
Good. Morning, Mitch. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Okay, my question is that I have a comment and a question. My comment is I believe that the Earth is so unstable is because of all the hydrofracking that's going on, the pull from natural gas, and all that these corporations are doing around the planet. And because of that, the Earth is ready to fight back. With that said, my question is what is your take on why we're having all these earthquakes around the planet over the past couple of months, the increased activity with all the earthquakes?
All right, and I've long since, the old Gaia theory, Mitch, that this planet is alive, it's an organism, and it's fighting back.
Take us off like a leaf, like a flea.
Yep.
I do believe that. I really do. I think he was also referring to the expelling or extraction
of gas and oil.
Of gas and oil.
Yep.
Now that is an exact example of fluid displacement. And all geologists are comfortable with that. When you pull out and they liquefied the gas, so when you pull out the gas or the oil, you bet it has an effect on tectonic plates. So that could certainly be playing a role, absolutely. But I believe that probably the largest cause of cyclical events is probably narrated by the sun.
Maybe so. And, his question is, why so many earthquakes over the last few months? Anything different?
Yeah. We're going further into cycle 24. We're now experiencing M and X class flares, and it's not going to go anywhere but up. And let me get this in, George, before we move on off of solar cycles. This is extremely important. On September 7th, 2011, and you and I briefly spoke about it at one time, NASA Solar Dynamics Observatory, the SDO, has provided scientists new information about solar flares, indicating an increase in strength and longevity. What I'm saying is that they have now found that the instruments are telling them, such as the EVE, which is called the Extreme Ultraviolet Variable Experiment. That's what they call this thing that rides on the satellite, on the SDO satellite. Mm-hmm. With these new instruments, it's telling us that they have underestimated the potency of solar flares, CMEs, and any sense of charged particles.
They should have been around in 1859 when we got zapped by one, huh?
Well, I'll cover that too. But these solar flares are having a longer effect on the Earth's magnetic field, up to 5 hours beyond what their original prediction were. Now, get this one, George. Again, the same breaking news information, September 7th, 2001. If scientists only measured a large solar event prior to this new information, they would have underestimated the amount of energy shooting into Earth's atmosphere by 70%. So remember me telling you, George, that I would expect these earth-changing events, the earthquakes, volcanoes, and hurricanes, that there'd be more of an effect if it was X-class flares or larger, like in cycle 23. Well, now I'm understanding why. Even M-class flares I believe, are having the potency of what we used to think X-class flares did. Now, I also believe that part of that is because of the reduction of the magnetic field itself. So everything is playing in, and guess where it's all taking us to 2012.
Sure is. Thomas in Austin, Texas. Go for it, Thomas.
Hey, George, you're a godly man, and Mitch, we need more men like you to wake people up. My question is this, is all this that's going on, is it has something to do with the sign of the times, like Jesus said there's going to be earthquakes and all that?
Pull out old Revelation here, Mr. Battros. What do you think?
Yeah, well, you can pull out Revelations, you can pull out the Bible, you can pull out the Sanskrit, you can pull out the Mayan sacred books, you pull them all out. And every single ancient text that I have studied and have interviewed some of the highest scholars we have on ancient texts, they all say the same thing. The question is, are we in that time? And I'm going to say that we are. I think even in our lifetime, George, that we're there. And they all say that something's going to happen. Often they refer to the skies or to the heavens, and you will be different. Not that we're all going to die, but that something's going to happen and you're going to be different. Let me give you an example of the accuracy of ancient text. I've been in touch with Mayan elders from Guatemala. I've been so over the last few years, and for whatever reason, we've created a great rapport and relationship. They trust me. I love them. And so they give me information when the elders go into council, which they do at least once a year, and review the ancient text and the prophecy and the calendar. They tell me what may happen. This was July 25th. The Mayan elders contacted me. They said, "Watch the water."
Watch the water.
Watch the water. And they also told me, watch the last 10 days of August. Watch the water. Watch the last 10 days of August. That's specifically are very, very close to exactly what they said. Here comes August 21st, the last 10 days of August. Hurricane Irene.
Right on.
I knew it was that they said it was going to be a big event. Now, it could have been a tsunami. I mean, it could have been anything that would be large. I think Hurricane Irene fits the bill, costing billions of dollars in damage, affecting several states. Thank goodness the casualties were low. But what did they base that on? They based that on basically what the Christians base much of their beliefs on is the Bible. So it's a book. It's an ancient text book, and it's also prophetic. Well, so do the Mayans, and I think, in my personal opinion, the Mayans have a very accurate prediction because it's based in science. It's called the science of cycles. Now, the question is, did that civilization live long enough to be able to understand cycles of 23,000 years?
They should. I don't know. I don't think they did. So how did they know it?
I think they did. Do we have? Is the evidence complete that the Mayans were only around 10,000 years ago? This goes for all civilizations. We had this discussion before, George. It's got to be one of two things. I don't know how it could be any other way to have the accuracy that the Mayans and others have. It's either some type of extraterrestrial, and I'm open to it, but I haven't seen the evidence yet, or they've been around a lot longer than we thought.
Maybe so. Let's go. Go ahead.
Yeah. One thing that feeds that is that we now know, evidence shows clearly, that when the continents were closer together, that there was actually travel from Central America to Egypt, to the Middle East. It's widely believed now that there was an exchange of information. So I think there was a pool of information that came from this over thousands and thousands of years.
Let's go to the North Pole, but in Alaska. James is with us. Go ahead, James.
Good evening, Mr. Noory.
Hi.
First of all, about the solar flares, I want to tell you, the last 2 nights we've had clouds, but the night before that was, tonight and the night before was clouds, but the night before that we had a brilliant blue-green neon bar running across the sky, waving back and forth. The neon lights are great. The northern lights are great.
They sure are.
And the other thing I wanted to do is I had a question. I hear you all talking about the Azores and the possibility of a mega tsunami. I was wondering about the big island of Hawaii on the other side of the planet. They have a thing called the Great Crack. And I was wondering, had there been any activity there?
Only you could answer that, Mitch. What do you think?
I can answer that. The answer at this time is no, but he's right on. It's a very similar scenario. In fact, they use those two examples, Hawaii and the Canaries, with these landfalls. It would be a very similar scenario. It wouldn't be a volcano. It's related to a volcano and it's related to an earthquake, but not the 9.0 like Japan or Sumatra. This would be dirt, land. It would be a landfall, megatons flying into the ocean and creating that huge wave.
Mitch, as we look at everything that's been going on, the solar activities, these earthquakes, the potential of volcanoes, more hurricanes, can you in your lifetime say that previous times were worse, or would you say the period we're now living in is one heck of a time?
Oh, that's easy. Science clearly shows that it's been much, much, much worse. This isn't good, but greenhouse gases were 100 times worse than they were at one time. Volcanic activity was rampant everywhere, which contributed to the CO2. It was just a forming planet. Now there is an ebb and flow. Remember, George, it's not just one cycle. There's cycles within cycles. So there's things that coincide, move at the same time, simultaneous. So as there's evolution, and as the Earth is maturing, that's a constant. So as part of the maturing, you're going to have the growth pains and the volcano and earthquake activity make the mountains, have the ocean. But within that, as it matures. Then there's just regular natural cyclical events, some 100 years, some 500 years, some 1,000 years, of escalated earthquake or volcanic or hurricane. Let's just call it earth-changing events.
Well, as we've always said, Mitch, as you know, we're always in a cycle. Mitch Battros with us, his website, earthchangesmedia.com. next hour.